I'm your host, not Jason Miles, and welcome back to This is Revolution. Peace to the mods, peace of the chat. This week, we somehow went from World Cup updates to ranking revolutions for America's birthday, which frankly is a very This is Revolution thing to do. If you missed those shows, check them out after this one. If you're watching and not subscribed, join our 20,000 plus subscribers. It's free. If you're already subscribed, thank you. And if you're not, Jason says you're stealing. I would never say that. Also, we're definitely not a cult. Today, we're talking about what happens when food becomes leverage. When I was in college, I was broke and hungry. So was my classmate. One day she told me she was on food stamps because she was, quote, a poor college student and food stamps were for poor people. I had never considered getting on the program, but eventually, when the fashion industry repeatedly tried to spit me out, I signed up. I went from hungry and underweight to eating 3 times a day for the first time since adolescence. I then discovered food assistance wasn't really about food. After a long bout of unemployment, I was forced to move back home, which also meant attending a mandatory workfare program we'll call Employment for America, or EFA. My dad drove me to the building in Far Rockaway, Queens, a place that God clearly abandoned, early one Monday morning. I would have to report there Monday through Thursday unless I had a job interview. My hours were spent in a classroom with other mandatory attendees while Mr. Johnson, the best part of the experience, taught interview skills and resume writing, even though we weren't unemployed because we didn't know how to write resumes. No one wanted to be there, and everyone in the class tried to make the best of it together. We even calmed each other down when one of us got frustrated and threatened to walk out, reminding them that they needed to comply because they needed to eat. There were many characters. Kimberly, my bestie, said she only got $5 from food stamps and only applied because there were certain jobs she could get if she was on food stamps. Charles, the smooth talker, barely had any money for himself, but one afternoon he bought a $5 Little Caesars pizza and insisted we split it in the parking lot. Mr. Johnson, our teacher, gave us side gig advice, tips for navigating the job market, and hope that we would get out of there one day. And then there was me, who sat with my arms folded on high alert for hours the day we discovered the building had bed bugs, because leaving meant going back to hunger. Occasionally, some guy stuffed into an ill fitting suit would pop into the room and call one of us into his office. This meant he had some job opportunities for you to agree to, which were never good and were often at a local Dunkin' Donuts for some reason. People came back warning the rest of us never to work there. The workfare program wasn't simply helping people find work. It was supplying labor to employers it had relationships with. I later realized the men in suits worked on commission, at least partially. I was treated differently when they found out that I went to college because they could get a bigger commission off of me. They pushed me to lie on interviews they arranged and obstructed me from leaving on time to interviews that I arranged myself. I learned my hunger was big business. Eventually, many of us were offered temporary work administering state civil service exams. Scarcity didn't bring out the best in people. Workers began stealing hours from one another. I planned to blow the whistle while some of my coworkers, allegedly, planned to jump me after work. One by one, we managed to escape. Kimberly became a teller at a credit union that prioritized food stamp recipient applicants. Charles took a commission-only sales job and thrived. Mr. Johnson retired his wife with his side gig money still works at EFA, and has never brought a bed bug home from work. I was able to leave to care for my father after his cancer diagnosis because Mr. Johnson covered for me. And EFA was eventually sued for labor violations against their own employees. But for a while, all of us lived inside a system that treated food less like a necessity and more like a bargaining chip. When every meal comes attached to surveillance, bureaucracy, humiliation, and coerced labor, hunger can feel like the better option. Maybe hunger isn't simply the absence of food. Maybe it's the conditions placed on the people who need it the most. I'm your host, M. Toussaint, and today we're asking, why does eating require you to prove you're deserving in the United States? To help us metabolize all this, we've assembled a nutritious power panel. First up, he's the ultimate co-host on This Is Revolution, a grits for breakfast enthusiast, and the sapiosexual stem sugar. He is Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, M. Toussaint.
Hello, Pascal.
Yes,
Next up, she is the founder of the Black Feminist Project, an urban farmer extraordinaire at Libertad Urban Farm, a judge on Food Network, and a working mother from the Bronx. She is Mama Tanya, aka Tanya Denise Fields.
Hi. And
Hi.
actually, the name of the farm now is Black Joy Farm. We changed our name probably close to 10 years ago.
Are you serious?
I'm so serious.
Okay. I will need to update my software. Uh, Lastly, but not leastly, he is a writer, policy analyst, presumed protein bar fan, and TIR's second favorite mulatto. He is Bertrand Cooper.
Hey everyone, I'm happy to be the second favorite mulatto. I assume that means Toure is the first for now, but
That's so
not
funny.
mulatto, and he would be offended. Both of them. He'd be like, both of my parents are light-skinned black Negro.
Okay. It's just an old school light skinned family like my dad's. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't need to know who the favorite is, but I'll be number one on here someday. Hello to everybody and the audience.
I thought you were number one. I'm trying to figure out who number one is.
You don't know who number one is?
Who's the number one favorite mulatto?
Paul.
Oh, Paul Prescott. Good point.
Oh, yeah? You think that makes sense for him to be number one?
Yeah, Paul's been on more frequently. Plus, Paul's got some Caribbean background, so he fits more into the demographic.
There's always one prettier girl at the mall, Bert. Just know that, you know? It's not all about
I
you.
just keep going to the wrong mall.
Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone had a nice breakfast today.
Tanya, are you wearing Knicks paraphernalia?
I am.
He said paraphernalia.
I noticed that.
I am. I'm from New York. I'm a born and raised New Yorker.
I'm born and raised in New York, too. I'm also not a Knicks fan. But I celebrate y'all. I congratulate y'all on your championship.
Okay. I'll take it.
Appreciate it.
I'm happy the Knicks won. Though.
So, have any of you ever experienced food insecurity? Maybe not the easiest thing to admit. I understand. Not the easiest thing to talk about.
Wow. So I actually, it's funny to say right after that, I was able to write an article on that for the New York Times. I was food insecurity. They have two levels. I was low food security or very low food security, probably from age 14 until I was 26. There were some periods where it was a little bit better, but it started off in 14. I spent that year and most of the next year having to steal from the grocery store or having to panhandle in like the cafeteria, asking folks for like pocket change. And maybe by the end of lunch, I'd have enough to hit up the vending machine. But yeah, I was hungry all the time.
Wow. Well, considering that 43% of the people who are eligible for food stamps are children, that makes a lot of sense, Bert.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've panhandled too, but at the time I didn't really need to be doing that. It was just a thing we were doing, but it was for food. Um,
um,
yeah, go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say, and it's interesting to think about these policies now because I was part of the segment, poor children that are hard to reach because their parents do not um, involve themselves in the system. So even though there's reduced lunch, there's free lunch in the state that I was at, I didn't have anyone to sign me up for those and didn't have alternative means of accessing
Wow, too young to forge signatures.
it.
I
I was
understand
getting
that.
there.
Some people
I
have
was getting
to.
there. I did
I
that. It's funny you say that. Like 2 years later, to get into my next high school, because I fled the state I was in, and to get into my next high school, I just forged a letter from my mom saying that I could stay where I was staying.
I mean, I'm not above it. I'm not admitting to anything, but I'm not above it.
I don't think they can get me now.
That's what's up. Um, what does hunger actually look like in the U.S. today? Pascal, you were starting to talk about this a bit.
I mean, hunger disproportionately affects poor people. I mean, according to the statistics, right? 36% of food stamp recipients are white, 25% are black, 16% are Latino, and so obviously this is something that disproportionately affects poor communities of color, even though there are larger numbers of whites overall who are recipients because there are more poor white people by aggregate. But what shocks me in terms of these statistics is how much this is a condition of children. Where, as I stated earlier, something
Hmm.
like 43% of the recipients of food stamps are actually children. That's and also I think another something like another 30% are senior citizens, if I'm not mistaken, by according to the numbers. So and another 11% are disabled people. So based on those numbers, it's something that for the kind of harshness that we get in terms of policy discourse around things like SNAP benefits and benefits for food insecure people. You would think that they were talking about people who are out there using food stamps to buy Lexuses and Mercedes Benz, but in
Hmm.
reality, we're talking about actual kids. So it just demonstrates how there's a disconnect between the rhetoric our policymakers, particularly towards the more conservative end, have towards the recipients of these benefits and the lifestyle of the actual people who need these benefits.
Um,
Hmm.
if I could throw out there just on the hunger question, because this was one of my favorite from the list. Pushback that I receive an awful lot in poverty discourse is that people imagine that hunger in the US just has to be of a different character than hunger you hear about in other parts of the world.
Hmm.
But the USDA survey, when they were still getting funding for it, splits folks into food insecurity with hunger and without. And, half of the numbers that we're hearing about, something like 7 million households, are food insecurity with hunger or very low food security. So the numbers for those folks are like 69% reported being hungry and not eating, half lost weight, and what's it, around a third report not eating a whole day, and a quarter report not eating a whole day in the last 3 months. So, unless malnutrition is somehow special within the US border, it's a level of hunger that, passes muster with anyone who's thinking about what it means to be starving.
That's a really important point. It's certainly not just within the U.S., although a lot of this conversation is like I had to narrow the scope somehow.
Of course.
But certainly this is a worldwide problem, especially for children, which is maybe the biggest shame. Tanya, is hunger mainly about not having food or not having enough money?
Um, I mean, from an American perspective,
Hmm.
we we throw away a lot of food. We throw away millions of pounds of food. This is not about not having enough food, and this is not even about having enough money, right?
Hmm.
We need to understand that food is a human right. And until we start to shift that culturally, until we start to understand that food is a human right, and that when we think about the amazing leaps and bounds of technological advances that we have made all over the globe, it is rooted in human beings being able to feed themselves. Agriculture was about being able to control food supply. And so once we started to master that, there literally is no reason why anybody in the world should be hunger, and there should be nothing that is a barrier like money. Right. So when we start thinking about the issue of hunger, we have to fundamentally shift the perspective around what hunger looks like. The reason that people are hungry, it is an invention. Hunger for the last 100 years has been an invention. There is literally no reason that anybody anywhere should be hungry other than the fact that there are people that want them to be hungry. When you have citizenry that you can control the food supply, the access to the food supply, then you are able to kneecap that citizenry. You are able to control that citizenry, right? And we have to understand that these things are also intersectional. These are about failures of systems. Well, let me actually walk that back, because the system is not failing. The system is working exactly as it should, right? So these are about intentionally corrupt systems and skewed systems that work to keep people in particular spaces of a hierarchy, right? And so this is just one of them.
I know we're gonna like mention poor laws later, but I was like really looking for. I only got to like see a little bit about what you do, Tanya, but I was really interested in your answer to that question, just because that divide between like whether it's about food or it's about money, we came up with we prop up a system of agriculture where a tiny percentage of our population is responsible for all the farming. It's concentrated in small areas. And we want to like when I worked at Cracker Barrel during the recession part-time, it sucked. They would not give me more hours. I threw away one of those brute garbage cans full of food every single night, every night. If there was a different food distribution system, if food was closer to us, or if we invested in infrastructure there, or more community gardens, or any of these things, we could get food directly to people. But instead, we keep up the system of just letting food be concentrated in a small area, keeping it in a way that's beneficial for capitalist interests. And then we all agree, oh, America shouldn't be throwing out this much food. We do want, poor kids to have food. But we also don't want to give people money to directly buy food, and we also don't want to change the system or reinforce ways of delivering food to people. So it's just all such an artificial problem, to Tanya's point.
I think Tanya makes a very important point in highlighting the fact that food insecurity is about policy. It's not about an accidental kind of happenstance or down on your luck narrative. It's about policy. It's about the way in which in our capitalist economy, we distribute resources. And there is something that in the way we view people who are marginalized in this economic competitive ecosystem that we have, that we don't feel that we should actually share a basic resource like food with them and allow them to survive. And I think I agree with Tanya, that's fundamentally immoral.
We also have to understand that, like I was saying before, when we think about food as a human right, in a capitalist system, food becomes a resource. And we have a ruling class that exists only to control each and every resource. Bertrand, you make a good point when you start to talk about this idea that we throw out all of this different food. Like, I used to work at Starbucks, and many moons ago, as I was trying to get myself through school as a single mother, I would work at Starbucks. And this is back when they had like those cellophane wrapped like submarines and the lemon cakes, and we had to mark them out. And marking them out meant that you put all of this stuff into a bag and then you threw the bag outside. What happened was the employees who didn't get paid enough as well as people from the area, homeless people, they understand what's happening in the community. Houseless people understand. They would come at a certain time to rip those bags open, and employees included would take the food out of there, all of it individually wrapped. We started getting written up for doing that. Then we were instructed to start putting like throwing garbage on top of that food so that the homeless people could not have it. Why? Because we could not let people in the community know that you don't actually have to come in here and pay for this food, right? We this is like if somebody can't make money off of it, then nobody can have access to it, right? And so these resources being um controlled is about the ruling class, which let's be quite honest, at the risk of sounding like conspiracy theorists, and you know what, this day and age we should probably all be conspiracy theorists because we're actually watching the theory play out in real time, right? It is about the ruling class who also essentially undergirds our and guides our government, right? All of these connections and overlaps and systems that essentially move our government. Like our elected officials do not work in a vacuum where they're only working for the benefit of their constituents. They are absolutely driving policy that is being led by the ruling class that is putting money in their pocket. And so at the end of the day, food becomes a commodity. People don't give a shit about feeding kids. We know that. When I hear people talk about cutting SNAP, what I actually hear them saying is that we are willing to starve children for the purposes of profit. SNAP
What?
is about children, and we are willing to starve children for the purposes of profit.
I
I
think
heard.
it's even more cynical than that. Sometimes we're willing to starve children for the purposes of posturing. In other words, we don't want to seem like we're indulging in fraud, waste, and abuse. So we've got to cut these kids off from a lifeline of food. But of course, you're right, Tanya. It's for the profit in that agribusiness is big business. Food is not only a commodity, it's a business in America. And business is governed by the rules of capitalism. And when we have agribusiness and we have food manufacturers and we have, the 6 or 7 major manufacturers of various types of food, bread, and circuses and all that other stuff, they donate to those politicians that are setting up the policy to make sure that those food prices are in a position where they're not going to be able to reach the needs of the majority of the marginalized people who need those foodstuffs the most. And it's going to become a commodity and it's going to become outpriced to those people. And that is also part of the policies that keep this kind of circuitous capitalist system going. And I think Tanya is right on the money. So her passion is deserves to be applauded. She's preaching to the choir here.
If I could stretch out that point, and I love the opening essay that you, or the opening that you had, Toussaint.
Yeah.
All of these policies around poor people generally represent a very low amount of capital, and yet there's this unrelenting need to extract what can be extracted. And so you come up with all of these policies, somebody has to get their cut. I mean, it's bizarre that in the process of asking, hey, should we feed starving people and starving children, we have to do it in a way that benefits farmers. And then we have to do it in a way that benefits convenience stores and grocers. And then in terms of the work requirements, to what you said, Toussaint, we have to have separate organizations that get paid commissions based on who goes to what job. And there's just seeming...
That's called a racket.
Yeah.
It's called a racket. Now let's call it what it is. I think about all the ways in which we criminalize poor people, the ways in which we talk about crime and all this kind of stuff. And then you look at the government and you look at these policies and you realize the only difference between so-called criminals and our government is who's sanctioned to do what. It's a racket. It's a whole racket. Food is a racket. The agencies that oversee policies around housing and homelessness and houselessness. That's a racket. All of when you look at the ways in which our governments run, it's just full of collusion and rackets. That's it. There's no
It's
reason that we can't even be growing food in cities. There's no reason that a good like there is no reason that in terms of where we've come, in terms of design and public design and all of those different things, that we could not be growing a significant amount of food in actual cities.
the extremes of what's recorded in terms of just the history here, just the viciousness of these policies that create this, like in 1932, 33, they slaughtered 80% of the pig population rather than dole out that surplus. Like that's how much they'd prefer not to assist. And in terms of these fights in Congress, you have so many people actually saying in writing, like they do not want to give poor people ways to survive without having to accept low wage labor. There are, there's people saying who's going to iron my t-shirts.
To realize that all of this shit is made up. Because when people are empowered with that, the one thing that I see when I'm like looking around the internet, and sometimes when I fall down a rabbit hole of right-wing MAGA rhetoric or something, is this idea, which to me, from a logical standpoint, seems crazy, and from a sociological standpoint has actually been disproven, but we know niggas don't read. So in any event,
thanks AI,
they believe that if we give people handouts, then people won't work. This is a persistent myth that is pushed because if people actually realized that folks could eat for free, that we could create a society where we could have food systems that actually empowered people to like feed themselves and did not need major food companies to distribute food. If people realize that, the ways that they would be empowered, right? We could actually, like, the name of the show is This Is Revolution. Well, then we'd actually really be talking about revolution. Like, motherfuckers would be out here in the streets, and folks would actually be putting pressure on the government to provide these solutions to support. Well, they don't have to provide the solutions because the reality is that humans already know how to do this. We are living in a capitalistic world that keeps making us believe that we actually don't, that disempowers us, that keeps us distracted, right? That is addicting us to digital and social media, right? The reality is that capitalism disconnects us from an ecological system, because if we understood that we were part of an ecological system, not that humans were here to try to dominate it, right, then we understand that we could feed ourselves because we've been doing that until some folks came in and started giving convenience and making us believe that convenience was worth the fucking premium when it wasn't. If people start to remember, because it's not like we don't know, but if we were able to tap into our ancestral memory, if niggas read and were actually able to go back and look at the ways in which we were already able to do this, and that we should be using increasing technology to expand upon that, the motherfuckers would be out here in the streets, and we actually really would be having the rich for dinner. Don't be asking me what we gonna eat. We gonna eat these niggas, right? But if they can get you to believe in this lie that if we give handouts to hungry Americans and hungry children, that people would not work, and we all believe in that and we become complicit, then we hold up empire. We become the gatekeepers to empire. When the reality is that we have seen sociologically that if people's needs are met, they are actually more productive, and you don't have to force them to do it. You don't have to mandate and sanction that people go work 40, 50, 60-hour weeks in low-wage jobs. Then kids from the hood actually are able to be more innovative and more creative. Now, if you look at a system that relies on anti-Blackness and racism, well, then we don't want poor black kids from the hood to be innovative and creative. So this is how you start to see how all these things start interacting with each other, right? Because the reality is, if motherfuckers were nourished and fed, we actually would have a world that was more equitable. Ruling class don't want that though. So you keep niggas hungry. You get people to buy into the complicity, particularly white people. You tell them that this is a function of black people's deficiency, of their inability to go out and to be creative and to be part of the working class that pulls himself up by the bootstraps, and efficiency that keeps them hungry. And if we give them a handout, all we're going to do is allow them to expand this deficiency and this dereliction, when we know that if you're actually reading, if we understand sociology, that's exactly the opposite.
I wanted to mention this comment from No in Adorno. Don't know what that means.
I think
Oh, I
Adorno
get it.
from Frankfurt School.
I
Or
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
yeah.
It took me a second. He says, or this person says, when I worked at a grocery store, my brand was right outside where the homeless encampments in town were. We threw away so much food at the end of every night. I have heard that one of the reasons why they don't want people going through the dumpsters when they throw food out is like a liability thing. They don't want like lawsuits. What if a homeless person eats this food and it was actually no good, and then we have a lawsuit on our hands? Interesting.
That's a
I
lie. It's a patented lie. I don't know what
It's
else.
all
I like to call a thing a thing. It's a fucking lie, and your government lies to you every fucking day. And you're talking about liability when we have been looking at for the last 50 years all of the ways in which the government, through their own policies, the USDA, the FDA, has actually said it's okay to fucking poison us. It's a lie. It's a lie. That's it. It's just a lie. It's a lie that they tell you so that you don't actually use your fucking brain to be like, why the hell did I just throw out 50 sandwiches? 50 sandwiches at Starbucks, they charge $12.95 for every day. And then some homeless person can walk up and just get it out of the garbage, still wrapped up nice and tight, still safe. What was the difference between that sandwich yesterday than today?
But one homeless guy did sue one time somewhere. So,
I
hey.
think there was. I think Arizona is a good example of the different levels of intent on this. You know, right now, and it's a terrible irony because Arizona is also the birthplace of like the food bank and the food pantry when they had to deal with huge issues of starvation. Now they're one of the ones where am I still? Oh, okay. Arizona at the lowest level is freaking out because now there's these penalties where if your error rate is 6% or higher, the costs that you have to bear for SNAP go up. And so at the individual office level, these people are all worried about. Am I cutting out a lot? Is that my internet?
A little bit. It's all right. Keep going.
Yes. No. Oh.
It's all right. Keep going.
At the level of like the government office and everybody just being worried about their job, those people are mostly worried in the abstract of they don't want a lawsuit, they don't want to lose their job, they don't want to be the responsible ones for their budget getting slashed. They pretty much just care about their performance review. At the state level, at the congressional level, they know it's nonsense that once in a blue moon a homeless person is going to sue. Like anything like that is very unlikely, and they know that. But they put in all these policy restrictions. I mean, you see the same thing at every level of local government. They put in these levers that make everyone terrified of a lawsuit. They do it with poverty. They do it with education. Anything they can put in there that makes people terrified of litigation tends to make people take 3 steps back the way Arizona is doing. Arizona has acknowledged that they're being extremely conservative in applying what's in that bill because they're pretty sure that their error rate is not going to pass.
You make a great point. Drunk Dalek says, yeah, American food production has like 40% of it wasted, doesn't it? So, according to public health advocate Marion Nessel, about 20% of it occurs in the household. And that's like,
Mm.
the strawberries getting moldy, the cheese, blah, blah, blah. It's worth combating that for your wallet. The food waste in that sense is a little bit abstract, but certainly for your wallet and your health. But it's still only about 20%. About 10%, she said, was supermarkets. Supermarkets, she said, were very efficient, which makes sense. That's the business that they're in. But all the rest is before anything gets to the supermarket. A lot of food is filtered out because it doesn't look supermarket ready or like what people think food in
Oh,
the
ugly foods.
supermarket
Yeah.
should look like. Right. So you have that company, Misfits or something, where you can buy like
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, the groceries that didn't make it. My understanding is it really doesn't make a huge dent in the problem. Let's see. We have a super chat here. Christopher Cotton says, "Thanks for this conversation. It is timely for me. Would be nice if there were a distribution mechanism for prepared food that is shielded somewhat from the liability of cooked food, in my honest opinion." What do we think about that?
I'm not sure I completely understand the comment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like this comment is jumping ahead a little bit in terms of what we're going to cover.
Hmm.
So, I think we're going to address this a little bit later on, and let's get into, I guess, our next section of the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of Snap. So, of course, I have created visuals.
There's visuals.
Yeah, so here's our visual that you can check out while I read this. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, is the largest anti hunger program in the U.S. It originated during the Great Depression in 1939 as a dual purpose system to help struggling families buy food while simultaneously moving unmarketable agricultural surpluses from farmers. Does any of this surprise you that this is the origin of SNAP?
No, I mean, I'm also kind of a ringer, right? Like this is what I do for work. So
Right.
so, when I got into this work, becoming an organizer around this, getting into urban ag, becoming a farmer, this was like food justice 101, right? And so yeah, I mean, I think also it would be remiss to not highlight too, right? Going back to what Pascal was saying about who is the most affected and then thinking about whether it's coincidence then that we start to see an attack on this when you look at the origins, because it was created during the Great Depression, and like most safety net programs, it was created in the Great Depression for white people. Right? Like black women could not access welfare for the longest time, right? And so when you think about that origin, why it was created to uh for the citizenry of white folks. You think about the Great Depression, you think about what happened around the time of the Great Depression and what brought us out of the Great Depression war, right? You think about the fact that the Green Revolution, the Industrial Revolution happened around the same time. All of these things are connected to each other, right? Because it was about being able to industrialize and sort of mechanize the food system for the purposes of being able to feed people at scale, right? And then also, what do we do with all of these other raw materials that we have as a consequence of war, right? The same petroleum based products that went into making weapons of war also now go into your food system.
I think for me,
Got it.
one of the things that's disturbing is that it took the Great Depression before this federal government of the United States had any kind of program to deal with food instability. I mean, that's kind of egregious when you think about it. That it would take a complete collapse of the capitalist system before a country realized that it has to do something to feed people who can't have access to food.
Hmm.
I think for me, the deals are always interesting what's being made because I I mean, this is jumping ahead like through some of those decades, but the food stamp or it becomes food stamped and then SNAP, but the program that we think of that comes out of JFK and his run and all this coverage of West Virginia and all of these starving people there. But the deal making that happens is interesting to me because you have the country being split into rural and urban sectors, and you have these two groups where essentially from their position 60% of America doesn't care. And so you have the people living in rural areas who are completely dependent on agriculture and have been driven due to capitalist pressures to just produce. And if they can't sell it, they just go bankrupt and nobody much cares. And, in the cities, they had, they tended to call things, they use the same welfare slander and say that things are just welfare for farmers. And then from the farmer's perspective, they think poor people, despite all of the rural poor in their areas, are a city problem. And most of the city Democrats coming out there, they have no one who cares about, the poor starving in their area. And so you have these two groups that a large percentage of the country doesn't care about, and they have to string together this kind of deal. I mean, even when you get into the agricultural side, it was two different sides of farmers who were versus each other. The people who were pro like food stamps were, Democrats from these liberal areas, but also they got some of the Republican farmers, cotton and dairy, who were very in favor of this and needed Democrat support or across the aisle support so that they could verse the other types of farmer like wheat and soy who wanted all farm money to go to like agriculture, wanted nothing to do with any sort of food relief program. And so decade after decade, you have to have this weird agricultural nutrition partnership between two groups who over time just see less and less of the population care. So less and less of the population cares about rural poverty, rural interest, less and less of the population cares about poor folks in the city. And the only way they can get anything done is to band together. And then around like the Tea Party, I know this is jumping ahead, around the Tea Party years, those states that me coming from like the East Coast, I think about as like farms, like Kansas, Nebraska. I just think it's all farmland. That's not where their representatives were coming from anymore. Their representatives were suddenly now the suburbs of Kansas, the suburbs of Nebraska. And those people didn't care about farms at all. And so you just see even less and less support for this partnership. And it just, at this point, it makes the whole thing really, really easy to attack.
We have this comment from MK. If we're complaining food is being wasted at grocery stores, isn't it a good thing we're using food surplus from farmers? I'm not sure people are really attacking the surplus from farmers. If anything, it's the subsidies. Can you speak to that for a little bit? You sort of did.
Yeah. The issue with the food surplus, I mean, in theory, it sounds great to take the surplus foods. The issue is that all of this exists. None of this is being motivated to the degree that we would want by compassion or community. Whenever we consider distributing food surpluses, there's this huge fight among farmers among what things are going to count as a surplus and how do you define a surplus? Is a surplus actually having extra food, or is a surplus when a farmer isn't making enough to cover their cost? So there must be so much out there that the commodity is being depressed. So it's nice to think that we could just work with farmers to take their surplus, but farmers fight over this. You see the same capitalist fight. You might as well replace food surplus with the possibility of making money. It's not, this is not an issue of just policies getting in the way of farmers handing over their extra crops to poor people. People still try to find a way to make money, to hedge their surpluses. There's been many times where when we do try to make these deals, farmers bank on just producing as much food as possible and just trusting the government to buy it. And it just, unfortunately, is never a system that really has at its heart. We just want to get a surplus of nutritional, well-balanced food to poor folks. And then the other part is nobody wants to invest fully in the distribution system for this. Nobody really wants to train everybody along that path of getting the food from, because we've got to a point Tanya made, like we could grow more in the cities, we could grow more locally, but we're the inheritor of this huge concentration of all the farming and all the farming tech in a few centers. So you need this huge distribution network to get all of that surplus to people. And that would be an investment unto itself that people are not politically motivated to do.
Thank you for that. Let's move on to our next part of the show. Another visual. While I, while I read this, public health and nutrition scholar Marion Nestle argues that today's debates over SNAP stem from the English Poor Laws of the 1600s. Those laws viewed poverty not as misfortune, but as personal failure. Relief was intentionally kept just out of reach enough to prevent starvation or rebellion. Recipients were required to work, punished for failing to work, and subjected to institutions designed as much to control the poor as to feed them. She concludes, their ostensible purpose was to relieve hunger, but they also had underlying political goals to maintain public order, control the poor, maintain a low wage workforce, and for politicians to gain power. The colonists brought these ideas to America, where they have influenced policy ever since. So, panel, what stands out to you about that?
The Protestant work ethics.
I said it like 15 minutes ago.
Right. We did sort of discuss this a little bit, just how much it's important to punish poor people.
Capitalism doesn't work otherwise. That's the thing.
Hmm.
Capitalism does not work otherwise. It absolutely requires a hierarchy. It absolutely requires that someone be a permanent underclass. It absolutely requires that somebody set a arbitrary value on production so that somebody else can reap the maximum benefits of that, which is profit. It doesn't and in order for people to be complicit in it, right, to not be out in the street in armed revolution is just so funny because when we think about the American Revolution, that's what the fuck it was about. I mean, the mythology, the American mythology was like it was about individual freedom. It was about fucking money.
Hmm.
It was about money and it was about who was getting taxed and who was getting money and who could keep money. And that's what it was about. So I'm not this is how capitalism works. This is literally I'm reading some of these comments and trying not to like jump in and interrupt you or rebut everyone where people are like starvation is natural is not. This
Hmm.
idea that we need these certain things and I'm always I should not be but I am always surprised at our lack of radical imagination when it comes when in regards to the solutions that we can create for ourselves and each other in how we create more equitable systems because niggas don't read, right? And because we also have a ruling class that is actually made, which is actually intentionally made it more difficult, right, for folks. Like I say that, and there's a part of me that is antithetical to my own politic because I'm putting this on the individual. Niggas don't read, but I also understand that niggas don't read as an invention or as an intention of ruling class making education that the way that they've made it, right? Niggas don't read because part of the last 20 years of social media and digital media has been about dumbing down our attention span, right? It's been about hiding and whitewashing, right? Or just outright lying about history. But when I think about the systems that would go into how do we do food and how do we do it at scale, I'm always really fascinated by how many of us don't look at our indigenous technological practices. We act like indigenous people, we act like pre-colonial people didn't have technology. We act like technology is only rooted in the digital world. I refuse to believe that we at clip pace are using eminent domain and all of the kinds of ways to commandeer swaths of land that we can put data centers on so that we can do AI where I can put in a prompt and turn around a video in 15 seconds of me dancing on stage with Beyonce at Madison Square Garden. But we can't figure out how we feed people at scale in a way that doesn't decimate the fucking earth. I just don't believe it. I just believe that we have the potential to have imagination that would get us there.
I cannot see the comments because I'm doing the big screen, but I just want to throw to Tanya's point. Any commenter who's saying that starvation is natural, all of the hunter-gatherer tribes have not vanished from the earth. All the indigenous tribes have not vanished from the earth. There's like 30, 40 professors who study hunter-gatherers for a living. Starvation is not common among any of the indigenous. It's not common among any of the indigenous tribes that are still in existence. It's not I'm talking Africa, Southeast Asia, South America. It's not common. Humans are very, very good at acclimating to the environment and finding ways to survive. On the poor laws, I think it's actually, there's, that whole line about history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. A huge reason why there was an influx of poor people during the 1600s is because they changed farming law. Coincidental to everything we're discussing here, all of the wealthy landowners in the very, very beginnings of mercantilism and capitalism, they wanted to kick off all the tenant farmers, consolidate all of their lands, and start pursuing, monopoly, the proto version of big agricultural business. They kicked off all the farmers who didn't have a trade, and those people flooded the cities. And the response to these people who had been kicked off farms and denied any way to feed themselves was to come up with poor laws. I think Tanya, and I'm sure Pascal's comment is going to cover, really a lot of the capitalist incentives to have these poor laws to focus on punishing and villainizing. I'll say maybe at a smaller scale, something that's always fascinating to me, and maybe a lot of people remember this when they were growing up, is you are on a bus or you're in a car with a parent or some adult in your life, and you pass somebody who's homeless, and that adult makes an offhand comment about, see, that's why you got to pay attention in school, or see, that's why you got to do this. A lot of people in our society, their proof that they are on the right side of things, that the world makes sense, that there's some structure to things, their idea of good and bad, and that you get rewarded for good deeds and punished for bad ones, is based off this economic system. It's based off the idea that you are in a nice house with a full belly because you made the right choices, and the right choices were in your power. But to prop all that up, it means every time you hear about a poor person, every time you see a homeless person, they have to have been to blame. They have to be the reason why. That's the only way you can still think about your life, what you want, which is that you did all this and everything makes sense. It is scary and terrifying and destabilizing to think like you're lucky. Wherever you were born, whatever part you were in, whatever strata, you are lucky that it worked out the way it did. Even me having the impoverished experiences that I did, I feel lucky sometimes when I look at how poverty laws and things around social safety net are changing, because I don't know that I would have made it out in the current environment. I genuinely don't.
You make a great point. I wanted to address this. Well, the starvation comment. So yeah, certainly indigenous people all over the world have had ways to combat starvation. One way is to send people food. Nuri Yank says Native Americans sent food to the Irish during the Great Hunger genocide. Great point. Certainly we have the technology, and that is what technology has always been, making sure you could feed yourself. We have even more now, and there are ways to get food to people. It's just like a political will issue. Here we have Leo saying, considering overweight problems, starvation is a solution. Incorrect. Um, a lot of folks would. I want to address this because yeah. So,
sorry. Sorry. On this comment, it is valuable to look up the definition of food insecurity and low food insecurity, because you will see that the people in very low food security, in that, which is, something like 11 million people, something like 5 to 7 million households, half of them report losing weight. the people that we think about on TV who are gaining all this weight while still being poor, that is not a fair representation of the people who are tracked by these surveys. That is not a fair representation of starving kids and starving families. At the bottom of this category that we're discussing,
is a function of poor nutrition many times.
Yes.
It is actually a function of poor nutrition generationally. But also that was just a trolly comment. Like I could get into the science of it, but I don't believe that that person actually mentioned that in good faith. I think that's just an asshole who's deciding that take this opportunity to be fat phobic and to engage in fat antagonism. So I don't even think it was, I saw it when it came up. I don't even think it's worth addressing. The motherfucker not even in the comments no more. That was just somebody who came by and decided to do some drive-by trolling. Fuck them.
I see. Hash Kush says that's not a helpful comment at all. In fact, much of obesity results from poor nutrition. Exactly. So, sometimes you can be nutritionally starved and overweight.
I don't see them prescribing starvation for middle and upper class people. So if it's such a moral virtue to be starving, I mean, spread it around.
Right. Let's pay a lot of money for starvation. So let's talk about the poverty, punishing poor people a bit more. Just want to ask, what do you guys think separates the deserving poor from the undeserving poor?
Bullshit. Bunch of nonsense.
Maybe that's the only answer.
These are all ideas that come out of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic notions of what exactly are valuable human beings, as if there's such thing as an invaluable human being. It's tied into the ethos that really gives birth to the Anglo-American project and the value system that it espouses of basically anti-life, anti-human, and anti-community.
I definitely agree. I mean, in the quote that I read, she goes all the way back to the poverty laws in England in the 1600s. So there definitely had to be a reason why this persisted that long.
I mean,
I think you point to something important. Bert?
For some folks, we're celebrating the 250th celebration, all of these ideas, whatever version of American exceptionalism, whatever version of capitalism works, whatever version of you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the inverse to every one of these positive ideas has to be that the people who do not succeed must be flawed in some way. Like, we're not going to be able to maintain the idea that this is a good economy while accepting that it fails people who it shouldn't have failed. Like, for this to be a good economy, it means the people who fail at it must be bad people. It just goes. And, I second what Pascal said. It's just baked in from Protestant work ethic to what, capitalist bosses need, to just people who have, a strain of patriotism going through them. There's just this insistence that our system is actually effective at distinguishing the deserving from the undeserving. And you need to think that to make all of this seem worth fighting for, as opposed to revolting and doing a completely new system.
Right.
Let's
look at the way in which our media in America react to the notion of democratic socialism, and how it's perverted into saying, oh, these people are communists. Just democratic socialism, which is basically a mild reformist concept that turns, basically policy into a kind of New Deal kind of welfare state. It's not even anything revolutionary or radical. These people are losing their minds. They are apocalyptic over the notion of, oh my God, we have democratic socialists winning elections in America. Because the notion of capitalist greed is so pervasive in this country. The concept of actually having an economy that works for the majority of people is anathema to their basic concept of human existence in this place. And
I agree with you. I'm like jumping out of my skin because of something I had got ready to say earlier, and then someone mentioned it in the comments. I thought COVID was it. I feel like we missed a moment in COVID. I was amped. I was ready. I was at the door. I had my backpack. I had prepared my children. I was like, y'all, it's getting ready to go down. The revolution, because COVID has shown us that all of this shit was made up and we actually could do this shit. We don't have to go into offices. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to work 40 hours a week. We can find systems that catch the rest of us without these sort of safety net agencies that also are part of carceral systems. We can do it. And I want to say that sort of tied into what Bertrand was saying about this idea of bootstrapping. Can I just quickly take y'all on a side quest of the etymology of the term bootstrapping? Can I
Let's
just
do
I'm
tell
it.
for it.
y'all?
I'm
Can
Let's
for
I?
it.
do
Because
it.
I want people to understand the etymology of it. Because I looked it up a couple years, like maybe 15 years ago, because it didn't actually make sense to me. I'm a Virgo, right? And so I have this thing, and I have ADHD. I'm a Virgo with ADHD. So I get in my bag, and I will go on these deep dives that nobody would ever think about. And I remember people I remember hearing bootstrapping so much growing up. I'm 45. So I came from the era where everybody was talking about bootstrapping. And one day, maybe about 20 years ago, I was like, this doesn't actually make sense. Let me see if I can actually do this. Let me see if I can literally lift myself up by my bootstraps. And I tried it and I couldn't. No matter how I tried to, I could not pull myself up by my bootstraps. I was like, where the fuck did this come from? So I go online, use the internet for actual research. And I find out that the etymology of the word bootstrap actually started as tongue and cheek. It was something that people said as a way to demonstrate that it was impossible. And somewhere
Wow.
along the line, I don't know what idiot got a hold of it and started making us all believe that it was something that was possible and that we could all pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. So what I started doing was that when I got paid to go do facilitation, I am 45, girl, for real, for real. So then so then what I started doing was that when I would go get paid by these colleges and these organizations that wanted a black lady to come in and do some sort of like social justice doming, I would go into these places. Because let's be for real, a lot of these white institutions bring people in like me because I really believe that like white supremacy and all of that really is like some sort of kink. Y'all be wanting black people to kick y'all ass and it makes y'all feel good. But I would go into these places and I would actually start off my facilitation by asking everybody to get down on the floor, to pretend they had bootstraps and to grab those bootstraps and pull themselves up. Almost every single time I did it, either no one could do it or there'd be like one double jointed white lady who took yoga and she could do it. But nobody else could pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So we are actually even using things that, if you get down to it, the irony is that they were used to demonstrate that it was impossible. These systems where we think that individuals can outwork a system to get to success is literally impossible. And again, we knew that. And if niggas read, they would know that too. And we wouldn't keep using that as a term to demonstrate the success of the individual spirit. I just wanted to tell y'all that.
I love this
Appreciate
story.
it.
I I think there's a lot of people who genuinely have, they're just malicious to the poor. They're vicious. And that really is their mindset. That's their whole goal. That's everything they're doing. But I also want to throw out there, some people here are just Machiavellian. And a lot of this deal making is the poor people, the lives of the poor are just like a prop. They're a theater for making it look like you're getting some shit done politically because we get these Republicans who come into, and this has been happening for forever. They talk about how they're going to cut taxes, they're going to cut this, they're going to cut that, they're going to cut that. And then when they finally get power, they find out you cannot touch anything that is entitlement for the middle class. You cannot touch anything that gives money to any of these large voting populations. And so to seem effective, they just go where they know that there's people to attack. And that is always, 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 always programs for the poor, it's education, and typically it's also labor laws, especially any laws that might, help unions. But there's a lot of people who are just doing this so that they can seem like they're keeping some of their political promises, and the poor are collateral damage in that process every time because there's nothing else to cut. Not unless you want to take something from corporations or people who are in the middle, and they don't.
Mm.
They just sacrifice the poor over and over and over again to seem effective. And it's this group of people that most of us don't live next to. Due to gentrification, we don't even live a town over from poor people. They're just people out there. And you're allowed to create this whole dramatic theater about their lives. You can make it seem like they're just out here committing fraud, or they're doing this, or they're doing that, because you don't know them. And the only time people change their tune is when something happens to them, when capitalism takes away their job in some way, and they finally end up poor, and they see what it's like to go to one of those offices and to find out. And this is a side quest, if you will. As all this AI is happening, as all this fantastic technology is happening, as my phone is my wallet, it can tell me how to get to the grocery store, it can hold my coupons for the grocery store, I can pay my grocery bill with it. When you need to fill out any forms as an impoverished person, there is no AI. There's nothing but paper and repeating yourself over again and over again. It is
But
all high friction.
they will incorporate AI, but they're going to incorporate it as a tool of surveillance. They're literally going to incorporate AI, and they're going to incorporate it as a tool to kick people off of the welfare dole. I think about even COVID. I had been on a campaign for like 10 years when online shopping became a thing. I kept saying, well, why don't they include EBT in it? And I remember people telling me from the USDA to the FDA that it could not be done, even though JP Morgan Chase Bank was the one that was running the financial system for EBT. Again, like I said, a racket, right? And so when COVID came, and now, because here's a dirty little secret, we talk so much about handouts, but those same handouts run a large and significant portion of the economic system associated with the food industry. The food industry thrives because of welfare recipients. Grocery stores love welfare recipients, right? So when COVID happened, and now people are not able to go to grocery stores with the same, all of a sudden they figured out how to put EBT online. All of a sudden now you can use your EBT card to do online shopping. But 10 years before that, when they wanted you to believe that online shopping was worth the premium, when it was being used, right, as a tool of status, right, your ability to get your groceries dropped at the front of your door, that was only for people who earned it. But all of a sudden, when grocers started to feel the pinch because people were not able to use up their food stamps at the beginning of month, and they now were seeing that they were operating in the red, all of a sudden, within weeks, food stamps were able to go online. And even now, people talk about how folks should not be using food stamps online. I'll be online watching people who are doing DoorDash, watching people who are doing Uber Eats, who themselves are also probably using fucking food stamps, because we know the gig economy does not give people a living wage. They will be talking shit about people, groceries that they delivered to their house, assuming that because they had a large order, they must be using food stamps. And then talking about, oh, it must be nice to not have to work for your food stamps. I'm like, you can't get food stamps unless you work. So it goes back to this idea, this slide that you showed about how you got to get people involved. Like, capitalism runs on a hierarchy. One of the reasons that so many people, so many white folks have not, even though police brutality statistics show us, the dirty little secret is that white folks get murked by fucking police at at some significant rates as well. Even though you are seeing school shootings that are happening that are affecting mostly white communities, those demographics still will not join with Black mothers in Compton, in Brownsville, in certain places in New Orleans, because around police brutality and gun violence, because it would mean that they would have to associate with Black folks. So we try to make it seem like the reason that these things have happened are for some different reasons other than a whole system that works on screwing all of us. And the way that you do that is that you keep white people in complicit in the hierarchy so that they gatekeep it by believing that even if I live in a rural town and I'm as poor and as suffering as a family in Brownsville, I'm still white. And that has currency and that means something. And so somehow I'm still better than that family. When you look at it from an economic and system standpoint, those families have more in common than complexion and race, which is a construct. It's a construct that has real material effects, however. But the reality is, like, it requires complicity and gatekeeping of the hierarchy so that it can move forward. So the same thing happens in this discussion around food justice, right? And food and access, which is also racialized and gendered. We have
Mhm.
not even gotten into the conversation around the fact that because these systems are being accessed overwhelmingly by femme and women caregivers, right?
Mom,
And
yeah.
their children, this system is also gendered. It is also, it's not just about like racial oppression, it's also about sexism and patriarchy.
Gotta punish the women, gotta punish the moms, especially if they're poor.
It's a very
Right.
small
And it
note.
keeps you dependent on this idea that I must procreate, I must marry, and I must be tethered to the right kind of man so that I don't end up in this system. Because God forbid we had a system that was humane, we had a system that was equitable, and we had a system that worked, then all of a sudden women wouldn't stay in abusive relationships for financial solvency and security. Women wouldn't stay in situations that disempowered them. Women would actually have more freedom to make decisions about their bodies and their families and be able to lead their families in such a way that did not rely on a system such as marriage and heteronormative partnering.
Just to add to Tanya's point, like this was explicit during the labor movement. They used to call it, paying men a family wage. But the labor union movement, when it had opportunity to join with the various welfare movements during the 60s and 70s, and that was primarily led by women who had been on different welfare programs and were looking for exactly the sort of freedom and autonomy that Tanya is describing, they threw them under the bus and said, just pay men more, and then the women can marry men and be taken care of through that. And people were explicit about not wanting cash aid to poor families, not wanting food support to poor families because they didn't want to empower women to have other choices. And unions were happy to side with the more conservative voices at that time if it meant higher wages for the predominantly white men in their party. So again, poor people are this bargaining chip all the time.
Let's see. Pascal had to dip out for a minute. You're
I'm
back?
back.
Are you
I'm
good?
back.
Nice. I wanted you to talk to us, take us on a little side quest, maybe, about
Side quest
about
Saturday.
the pervasive myth of the welfare queen. What can you
Well,
tell us
it's
about
really interesting that you chose this time to go into that because, as Tanya was so eloquently stating, there's a gender notion to the punishment of poverty that we have as well. And one of the most horrid manifestations of that was the notion of the welfare queen. The welfare queen is a derogatory stereotype popularized by Ronald Reagan during his 1976 presidential campaign to criticize entitlement programs. He based his stump speech anecdotes on Linda Taylor, a Chicago woman who used multiple aliases to fraudulently collect thousands of dollars in government assistance. Reagan's exaggerated stories were used to argue that welfare systems were bloated and ripe for abuse. While Taylor was a real fraudster and convicted criminal, critics argued that Reagan wielded her story as a political weapon to generate outrage and justify budget cuts. The caricature became deeply ingrained in American politics, often used to frame poverty as an issue of individual moral failing and to fuel racial and gendered stereotypes about aid recipients.
And it's still good news. As far as a lot of people are concerned, this myth is it won't die. I can tell you, I've gone down to these offices and filled out this paperwork, and you sit down with the caseworker, and they have clippings from newspapers about so-called welfare fraud.
Well, it's tweaked itself for the times now, because now we think about the welfare queen, and I think it's actually been overshadowed by the welfare immigrant. So the
Mm-hmm.
face has changed a little
That's a
bit
good
to
point.
go along with the times, right? It's like for the
Mm-hmm.
first time, they're not holding up like some woman who looks like me in a community like mine. They're telling you that the big scary immigrants who have snatched up all the jobs, it's particularly the black ones, I mean the brown ones, the
Mm-hmm.
Somalian ones, and the Haitian ones who are eating the dogs and the cats, right? Which is
But they
crazy.
also want SNAP.
But they also want
Makes
SNAP. I was about to say they eat the dogs and the cats, and they want your SNAP.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pascal, you are right. The mythology of it, right? The etymology of the mythology of it may have gotten a little bit lost in the sauce, but they just keep repackaging this same trope, the same stereotype, the same urban legend, right? And but now it's immigrants.
To Tanya's point about niggas and reading, I have gone to high schools and been invited there to give a just, we'll call it a seminar, but to talk about poverty. And I have built that curriculum around actually talking to people about income and dollars and cents and what the poverty level is, because for a lot of these 17-year-olds, they will never hear. Like, no one's going to tell them, oh, this is how little a poor family is actually living on in dollars and cents. They might never find that out unless they actually go to one of those offices. And yet, as soon as they turn 18, they're going to be invited into these water cooler conversations about what we should do about the poor. If I just go anywhere where the public is and they're talking about politics, every other thing out of their mouth relates to some policy that poor people depend on. And it's all about the poor people out there. And there is no instruction on any of these actual definitions related to poverty. And I bring this up because it makes it easy to just spread all these rumors and folk tales about welfare queens or immigrants being able to do this or being able to combine your SNAP benefits indefinitely, where like it's the amount of ignorance people have about these policies. Like, they have no idea what the income level of an impoverished family is. They have no idea what food insecure means. They're never expected to learn these things. And they're just able to pass these kind of folk stories around really easily because
Folk
nobody
story.
knows anything about these programs. You can say whatever you want about these people.
Right. They are a mystery. No one
Mm-hmm.
ever, and they've been normalized to not be human beings. So nobody ever looks to take inventory or interrogate the humanity, because we actually live in a world that, the thing about capitalism as well is that what it does is it makes you believe that humanity is also on a hierarchy, right? So some of us get to be human and some of us don't, right? And so if you believe that poor people, particularly poor people of color, particularly poor people of color who are women, particularly black women, because I do not use the term black people and women and people of color interchangeably, if you believe that those people are less human than you, then you don't actually think about it. The person that you do see is human, who you actually aspire to, who actually becomes more human than you because they've got more money. You think that Bill Gates and Jeff
Elon Musk.
Bezos became and Elon Musk became rich because of meritocracy, because they deserved it, because they came from families that worked hard and continued the generational pattern of working hard. If you believe that, when they tell you these things, then you will believe it. You will not question it. You believe that they know it. They have sanctioned you as more human than these other people. And so you have no inquisitiveness and no curiosity. And so you just believe those things. You know that people who are on, the system of SNAP is, it's an electronics benefits transfer, EBT. In the hood, we call EBT Eat Better Today. We call it Eat Better Today because your benefits do not last you the whole month.
Right.
Your benefits do not last you the whole month. On average, EBT works out to, food stamps in particular, works out to $1 and I think 37 cents or 67 cents. Don't quote me, but it's under $2. Under $2 per meal per person, 3 times a day. That's what they come up with to figure out how much money you get to eat for the month. On average, people's benefits only last for the first week and a half to 2 weeks of the month. Overwhelmingly, everybody who is in the EBT system, who is on SNAP, must visit a pantry order to get their nutritional needs met, sort of, because the nutritional needs are still not being met. But in order to fill the gap somewhat, they must go to a food pantry. So this idea that people are out here popping out 76 babies with no good motherfucker so they can sit around and $600 in food stamps for their family of 4 and less than $200 in cash every 2 weeks is insanity.
And all while the birth rate's going down and teenage pregnancy is down. I don't know who, like, separate. On the conspiratorial note, there are a lot of things coinciding together, just like as SNAP is being cut, that are just very worse. I mean, last year they cut money to the survey that even checks on food insecurity, so we're going to have less information there. It's always been the case that grocers and retailers are not required legally to provide information on what SNAP recipients are purchasing or how much they're getting. They're allowed to keep that secret. And at the same time, there's all of these work requirement reports and statistics and different things coming out so you're cutting resources to poor people. And at the same time, I'm seeing like Fortune and Business Insider talk about how there's never been a lower percentage of able-bodied men working. And they're trying to drum up this fury over, there's not enough people working. And we also have states that wanted to lower the age at which you could start working. Basically you'd be able to be a full-time worker at like 14 or 15. Then they're also lowering, changing the age. What is it? It's at 14 now. Like once your kid's 14, that changes your access to benefits. It used to be 16. Essentially, all these things are coming together in a way where it really seems like they just want this starved, captive segment of the population that is available for very, very low wage work.
They're telling it to you. They're saying, make America great again. We just talked about the Depression. If you start thinking about the civil rights movement and what that came out of, why we even needed that. If you think about how fucking young America is, when you think about us as a society, we are essentially in the prepubescent stage as far as the longevity of countries go. 250 years is nothing. What are we making great again? What is great is what we are seeing is that there are people who are starting to realize that the bubbles are bursting, right? We've seen some of them burst. We know some more of them are going to burst. And in order for this country to continue to work for certain people the way it has been working, you must go back to those types of repressive, right? So yes, you think about what was it called, where all them young girls got locked into a factory? Help me out.
Triangle Shirtwaist Factory.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we need 8-year-old girls locked into a factory with one way in, one way out. And if they all got to burn up so that somebody can make a profit, oh, well, that's what they mean when they say make America great again. That's what they want. They want the ability to be able to abuse you with literally no oversight. They are trying to undo 100 years of regulations that we fought for in literal blood, the literal bodies of children of all races, of all ethnicities, okay? That we have created to protect children, to protect mothers, to protect families, to protect those of us who we knew were living in a racialized society that was being brutalized. Because that's the only way that this country gets to operate, so that a ruling class of able-bodied white men can continue to hoard resources.
Say it again for the people in the back.
I'd like to let me read this comment from Mr. Crash. Mr. Crash says, the only people still having more than one kid are Elon Musk, and that's a weird, nerdy white couple in the Bay. Oh, and that weird nerdy white couple in the Bay. So since he brought up Elon Musk, can I ask you, Pascal, is Elon Musk a welfare queen?
He's a
Yep.
government subsidy queen.
Hmm. Yeah, we don't judge him. So it's okay and cool and right to
Well,
take
it's
money
okay
from
with
the
Google because
government if you're rich.
he's considered to be the deserving rich. You know,
Mhm.
he's an innovator. He deserves to have the government spend endless resources on his multiple failed projects that don't work because he is the deserving rich. He's an innovator. He's creating resources for America. So we tell ourselves that he's the one who deserves to have resources expounded upon him.
Inspires me every day, every morning.
Who innovates more than poor people? That's how I feel.
It's a good question.
That
I've
part right
got
there.
one more. I've got one more visual for us today because we need to talk about this. The Hot Rotisserie Chicken Act. So, current debates over SNAP often focus not only on who should receive benefits, but also on what recipients should be allowed to buy. In one recent example, Senator John Fetterman and colleagues introduced an act that would allow SNAP benefits to be used for hot rotisserie chicken, which is currently not allowed under the program rules. The bipartisan Hot Rotisserie Chicken Act has successfully passed in the House and is now awaiting further action in the Senate as part of the broader proposed Farm Bill.
Oh lordy
What
lord, our time
what's
has
our
come.
take What's our take on the bill? Bert, you sound like you have something you want to say to us.
Um, Not in great taste, but I used to joke with people that I am convenience store black in the sense that like I was not inheriting these cooking like I came from people, a lot of people who have been in prison for 10 years living off of like food soups and stuff like that. They hadn't been near like a full stove in a decade. And this was true of the white side of my family as well. But a lot of these food policy plans are based off this imaginary idea of like the thrifty budget, the thrifty consumer. It's people
Hmm.
who have time and access to equipment and all of this stuff to be able to cook, who know how to turn like
Slow food.
yeah, who have that stuff. And there's a lot of people, and I want to be clear, so many poor people did keep those traditions alive and have that stuff and know
Mhm.
how to like break down a chicken and cook it and do all those things, know how to make rice and beans last forever. They've kept that stuff alive. I know people, in the hood who, were gardening even before there was a community garden. But I did not have access to that. And I'm thinking about the poor folks who do live off of just what does the convenience store have in your food desert? And so, like, I laughed when I saw the hot rotisserie chicken bill. Like, it is, it's funny. But at the same time, like, if it's a choice between being able to spend EBT on, Cheetos and string cheese and ridiculous convenience store snacks and Slim Jims and hot dogs, or being able to buy rotisserie chicken, I would like to be able to buy the rotisserie chicken knowing what I know about nutrition. That would be better for me.
Right. Well, I mean, unless you're getting the rotisserie chicken from Costco. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Hmm.
I'm trying to
Oh,
figure
yeah,
out
the
who's making money
hormonal.
from
Yeah.
this. They're not doing this to help the citizenry. So while I
Hmm.
think, first of all, I think people should be able to use SNAP to get hot food. I do. We are living
Yes.
in a world where we have gig economy, where this idea that people work from 9 to 5, this idea that your mama is home to cook you a meal, you know what I mean? Like, let's do the math for a quick second. Y'all talking to, I know one of the commenters said, who's having more than one kid? I got 6 kids, okay?
Mhm.
6
You're running
children.
a
My
restaurant
oldest
when you
child,
cook. Yeah.
I need, listen, I started recruiting some of them motherfuckers to be like the line cook. Y'all get in this motherfucker with me and we gotta figure this out. Lola, you gonna
Yeah.
chop, you go in the refrigerator. So cooking became a family affair. I'm also a chef. I'm a trained chef, right? That's part of the work that I
Yeah.
do. And I am opening a cafe called Cardamom and Thyme Social Justice Cafe at my
Mm.
community center, just for this reason, right? This idea that like capitalism is undergirded by the labor of people, of poor people. What, like, rich folks are not going out and slinging hash at the Waffle House. They're not shucking fries at the at the Burger King. All the service economy is overwhelmingly poor rural people and people of color and Black people, right? And when I say people of color, usually brown immigrants and Black people in urban centers that prop it up. When COVID happened, you had all of these affluent people that wanted people in service areas to go back to work because their lives don't work without those folks, without us, because I'm part of that class of people, right? And so this idea that like all of a sudden those same people have all of this time to then go home, make sure that their children, the same children that we fought for being out in the street with no supervision while mama is working, now she get home at 6, 7, maybe even 8 o'clock, depending on what shift she works, right? Or she's in the gig economy and she needs to go DoorDash or Uber Eat during the times that everybody else in traditional hours got home. She's got to come home, make sure her kid does their homework, get them in a bath. Then she's supposed to make a meal. On average, a meal, even with prep, is a half an hour to an hour. What time do the kids go to bed? What time does she go to bed? When does she get her stuff ready for tomorrow? So overwhelmingly, those people need access to nutrient-dense hot food. It only makes sense. And we're living in a world, regardless of what your socioeconomic class is, we are living in a world where capitalism is pressing all of us. I remember being in a room full of public health folks who were talking about making meals at home. It was an after work meeting. And I remember looking around the room. I said, who is at home with your child right now making food for them? We are sitting in this room at 6:30, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Who's at home making meals for your children? If it is not hired help, then your child probably has access to some form of resource where they are ordering food for themselves. So if you are doing that as a professional, what are people in the gig economy and the shift economy doing to feed their families? The reality is we are living in a world where convenience food and fast food and prepared food has blown up and has become a whole industry on its own because it is there to service a society that actually requires it. So why do we suddenly think that poor people should not have access to that same system? Why do we think that this idea that poor people have all of this time and don't work hard, the hardest working people are poor people, and then they're supposed to go home and do more labor? Now they're supposed to get shut out of the same resources and access that would allow them to eat while they're out here servicing everybody else. That doesn't make sense. Like logically, it doesn't make sense. So yes, SNAP should be able to be used for hot food. As far as this bill is concerned, I'm sus. I'm sus.
Where are they getting the chickens from? Are these even chickens? I want to, what's the word? I just lost the train of thought thinking about this chicken joke.
Well,
it's going to come back to me.
Let me ask you, is this bill just a giveaway to Costco? I know other places sell it, but everybody's first thought is Costco, right?
I do remember the thought now, if I can jump back to it too.
Go ahead.
When we were talking about punishing poor people and the idea of moralizing between the deserving and undeserving poor, I just want to say on the hot food comment, because it reminded me of this. And since we mentioned Bill Gates here, Bill Gates loves McDonald's so much that he bought potato farms just to be a part of the business. Warren Buffett, former friend of Bill Gates, up until the Epstein scandal, also loves McDonald's, claims to eat it every single morning. This whole hot food thing always reminds me of, lots of people would say that it was less healthy to do it this way. They shouldn't be having prepared food. But in addition, it was these fears over, we don't want to support poor people's obesity. It just makes me think of the moralizing, because people who aren't poor struggled with these foods so much that they're saving grace to get it. And I'm not shaming anyone for this, but they're having to use Ozempic to curb their weight problems. I mean, the idea that the poor are supposed to be these moral exemplars who make all their food from scratch, cook healthy meals after work. Meanwhile, apparently the good people are allowed to have McDonald's and Ozempic to deal with their weight problems, and they're still good people. It's all coming to a ridiculous head for me.
They earned it. That's why.
Ah,
They earned
They
it.
can pay for the Ozempic. They earned it.
I feel like in this conversation about the warm food, there's a lot of fear around people being able to use SNAP for fast food.
Could somebody who maybe
You can already
knows,
use EBT for fast food. You can use the cash portion of your card to go into McDonald's. They got big ass signs. You know why?
okay, they have that in
Because they
California too.
realize, yeah, they realize that it economically, like they
Mhm.
lobbied for that. They wanted poor people to be able to and come use the little bit of cash that they got to go in there and get McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever else. Even laundromats now. Laundromats will take the cash portion of your EBT. So this idea that poor people are sitting around not
That I did not know.
contributing to the because I live in the hood. I know. I see it all. I don't have to read it every day. I remember being at the laundromat and it was a big ass sign. I was like, word? You can come here and use your cash benefits to wash your clothes, you know? So, yeah. Poverty is invented and poverty is beneficial and profitable, just not for poor people. But there's lots of James Baldwin said it best many years ago, right? He said, it is very expensive to be poor. And so if it's very expensive to be poor, who is reaping the financial benefit of the poverty?
That's a question.
They, when they were observing it, it was for every dollar spent on SNAP, $1.50 to $1.70 was generated in economic activity. Now that's split between government recouping it with taxes, but also going to fast food places, retailers. So it's hard to just call it an expenditure because it does generate a lot of economic activity. And to Tanya's point about it being expensive to be poor, Matthew Desmond writing in his book on poverty and also his book on just the housing crisis, when they looked at rents in low-income areas, the landlords there were actually making more profit off of poor people than the landlords in middle-class areas, proportional to the cost of everything. So it is expensive to be poor, and it does make everybody, like Tanya said, makes everybody money except for poor people. I mean, every dollar spent on SNAP generating not just the cost, but $1.50 to $1.70. I mean, not too many programs can say that. But it's just listed as, it's an expense.
Did we lose Toussaint?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
sure.
I was muted. Okay. No, you make a great point. It is a profitable program. They do make money from the money they put in on it, and yeah, um, yeah, it is still getting cuts. Pascal, I would like
Equity
to
means
ask
that
you.
people have less, right?
Mhm.
Equity means that people don't get to hoard shit. They don't get to gatekeep and they don't get to control resources. That's literally the definition of equity, right? And so billionaires should not even be a thing. Like it should not even exist. I think most people, we say billionaires so often now that I think most people don't even understand what $1 billion is. Like I don't think they understand the gravity of $1 billion. When you're talking about multiple $1 billion, Elon Musk, I think last time I read an article, it was something like $43 billion. He was valued at this point.
Oh, he's much higher than that now. He's supposed to be close to the first trillionaire.
Thank you. So look at me, this.
Mhm.
This should not even be a thing. It does. You do not get there without the relentless, consistent, intentional crushing of whole groups of people in order to be able to hoard that kind of wealth. That requires that you hoard resources. It requires that you disempower people, right? And you disabuse them, and that you have whole people who are willing to be complicit in allowing one human being to amass that. without leading that motherfucker to a guillotine.
She said the G word.
Gee, I want to throw, just in light of the existence of a billionaire, we're talking about this program, and Snap has done a lot of wonderful things. But, in the history of this program, um, you talked about the youth of the country, which I think was a really good point. The youth of Snap being a program that was open to more people, it's really, really young. I mean, it wasn't until like the beginning of the 70s that they actually took away the spend requirement, because you used to have to spend a certain amount of money on stamps and then you got bonus. So if you didn't have money, the program never reached you. And then through a lot of the program's history, if you were Black, if you were Southern, if you were a Black woman in the South, you were not getting access to this. States always had the option to choose, prior to the 70s. They had the option to choose between offering SNAP, or they could just stick purely to commodity redistribution. And if the state picked to do food stamps, they couldn't do commodity redistribution. So the people who couldn't afford to buy into the program for much of its history were just left with basically nothing except for what charity could do for them. And we still have a situation where this program, even with its benefits, it doesn't get as much money as it should. And it's still not set up to reach the people who are the very poorest or in the worst situation, or can't get to the office to even fill out this paperwork. And so I just want to draw attention, this program already wasn't reaching the people with the deepest starvation. And now with these extra hurdles they have to jump through, it's not happening. It's completely unreachable to them. And this is all at the same time that a guy gets valued at $1 trillion, which he doesn't physically have, based off of what people say his company, his contribution is worth. And he's allowed to also take out on credit against this imaginary number that he's supposedly worth to pay for everything else in his life.
By the way, let's not blame this only on Republicans. Let's remember the great, horrible president that was Bill Clinton, and how he savaged, all of these programs, his whole end welfare as we know it propaganda in the 90s. So, yeah,
shout out to horrible shout out to Clinton. I mean, he approved essentially all of these poverty programs being switched over to block grants, with the exception of SNAP and maybe one or two others. And the block grant is just, here's money to do something for poor people given to the state, which they can then decide how to spend on it. And that's how we get programs like what Tucson had to go to, where they decide, what's better for poor people than actually giving them cash assistance? It's teaching them how to fill out a resume for a job that isn't even in their fucking neighborhood. So yeah, Clinton, his thumb's all on the scale on that one.
Absolutely. I know that there are a lot of people who are kind of new to being anywhere near center left. So this may seem an obvious question, but I'm going to ask you, Pascal. Why are politicians debating what SNAP recipients should buy instead of why so many people need SNAP in the first place?
Well, I think it's because it goes back to the notion of punishing the poor, and the whole policing them that goes back to the poor laws. That these people are only deserving of so much and specific things, and that we have to make sure. And not only that, I mean, to Tanya's point, what access they get has to be within the market share of what's viable for capitalism and what's important, and primarily the goal of capitalism as well. So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the poor must be monitored, and that they are not deserving of all the treats that everyone else is.
Good point. So let's talk about solutions. If you could make one structural change tomorrow that would reduce hunger in America, what would it be? And this is directed to all of you. So since you're already big on the screen, Pascal, you can go ahead and go first.
And capitalism will make this a radical socialist country.
All right, Tanya.
Yeah, I'm with Pascal. All of this stuff is these are branches, right? We got to get down to the root of this tree. And that is going to be dismantling capitalism and understanding that democratic socialism is not a dirty word. And truly, truly, for as many people as may think that this sounds naive and pie in the sky, my work is informed by the Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party always said power to the people. And so until we give power to the people, until the people understand their power, right? Then all of this shit is just we doing harm reduction, and we're not even doing it well.
Bertrand?
I will accept the name of any political system that results in basic necessities being removed from the market. I don't care what it's called. I don't care if it's socialism or something else. I don't want housing. I don't want food. I don't want medical insurance. I don't want it to be I don't want it to be under market pressure. And I don't care what system does that. I just don't want it to be involved.
You guys on the applause tracks.
I finally found it. I found the applause button.
Everybody should have gotten that.
Yeah, everybody should have gotten that for sure. I'll do it again at the end for everyone. So, are we saying that capitalism cannot eliminate hunger? It requires hunger.
Of course, it feeds the hunger.
Yep.
No pun intended.
It perpetuates the hunger. It creates the hunger.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great point.
Yeah, I can't solve this.
Can't solve this. So let's just go through some of the comments here that I've saved. Someone said blame Thomas Sowell. Is this his fault? And this person says Thomas Sowell is an idiot.
He didn't help. He didn't help.
He didn't help. We could definitely blame him for that. Marion Nessel is the GOAT. Agreed. Do you know her, Tanya?
I've met her once or twice. I was in a room with her the other day. She didn't remember me, so I'm as familiar with her as everybody else.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. This person says blame Larry Elder.
Oh God,
he doesn't have enough emotion to be blamed. Like fuck that guy.
Yeah, his riz is low.
Let's see. What else do we have?
He's on my shit list forever, man. I cannot stand that dude.
Just a quick shout out to the YouTube channel Farm to Tabor. They do cover a lot of Snap news, so that's cool. Randy says my disabled ass would be dead without Snap benefits. I mean,
that's not funny, but
yeah, this is the case for a lot of folks, and it is good that we have this program. Political Economy asks, do strippers get EBT? I just want to say you'd be amazed who's on EBT.
As long as they don't claim those tips.
It is discreet, very discreet now that you have the card that you can just run through, and a lot of people, it's not going to come up in conversation. How do you eat?
To be overly generous with it, like, yeah.
I'm wondering why. I'm wondering about the curiosity of strippers, though. Why?
I feel like he asks questions about strippers like almost every episode now.
Oh,
I don't know.
That's
because I'm imagining that it was said in jest, but sex work is work, right? And if we're going to talk about it, we're about to get into the intersections of it. Sex work, which is mainly dependent on the men and patriarchy for its existence, are some of the most underwhelmingly compensated workers for the work that they do. So I don't know the answer to that question, but if they do get it, good for them. They should.
I agree. Sune is not from the U.S. He's from Europe. I don't remember the country. I'm so sorry. But he asks, is rotisserie chicken considered a luxury in the U.S.?
Where did you say that this individual is from?
I want to say Denmark, but I'm not sure.
Well, according to Fox News, he now knows it's a luxury, and he thinks the same, because according to Fox News, everybody going to the World Cup is blown away by the rotisserie chickens lining Walmart. They've never seen such luxury. They're all jealous. All throughout Europe, they're like, I wish I had Walmarts and rotisserie chicken like Americans have. According to Fox
News, they're blown away by the air conditioning too. Well, hey.
They didn't know they were going to need it. I mean, scientists tried to tell them, but they didn't know.
Yeah. Hyperverbal says prepared foods or hot foods aren't allowed under SNAP. Explaining this to Sune. Also saying allowing roast chicken would be a good thing. Do we agree? Good thing?
Good
Yeah,
thing.
I
I
feel
think
like
on the
it should be
face of it,
limited.
I think it's a good thing. I do think
If
it's
it's
a
all I
good
can
thing.
get, that's the only improvement.
Mhm.
I'll take that.
Right. And if it is that and like ramen in a package, Maruchan, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
high sodium, no protein content, then yeah,
Mhm.
roast
Mhm.
chicken is good. What I will say is a hack though, right? And one of the ways when I was on Snap where I was able to sort of freak and finesse the system in terms of convenience foods is that if you go to Whole Foods, because I was always
Mhm.
about trying to learn how to work this system. If you go to
Mhm.
Whole if you go to Shop and Stop, if you go to StopRite, if you go to those large grocery stores like supermarkets,
Mhm.
there are usually cold prepared foods. So you cannot get a hot rotisserie chicken on Snap. You can get a cold rotisserie chicken on Snap though. And all you gotta do is put that bitch on a grill or in your air fryer or in your oven or in your microwave.
Mhm.
That's all you have. You can get cold empanadas at the stop and shop. You can get prepared cold salad at Fairway. RIP to my nigga Fairway. You can get when Fairway was when Fairway was out here and it was bumping. So here's the thing, y'all. For y'all who are Snap users, don't be scared. Take your ass into those high end places that sell cold prepared foods that
Mhm.
do not advertise that they take EBT, but they do in fact take EBT, and go
Yes.
buy cold prepared foods on your EBT and swipe that motherfucker like it's a black Amex.
What I'm getting
Facts.
from this is it's really important that poor people not get warmth unless they've earned it. The food should be
Right.
cold to the touch, otherwise,
Yes.
they won't work hard.
Like the cold ass hearts of the politicians who created these policies.
If you think of any other tips between now and the end of the show, please share
Yes.
them.
You can
Uh,
buy, for those of us who might have access to a little patch of land or can afford to go get a heating, like a grow lamp.
mhm.
Baby, you can go buy seeds with your EBT, the food portion, not the cash portion. Okay.
Mhm.
And if you plant things like arugula, which does not need a lot of space, you can do in a planter and it does not mind being crowded. Things like basil, like mint, like leafy lettuces, small tomatoes. That's going to save you some money in your budget. I know a lot of people like, oh, if you live in a city, let me tell you something. I have 2 grow lamps in my house right now. You'd be surprised what grow lamps will help you grow. So, $2 worth of seeds can give you months of a small leafy green or small tomatoes or those little Gershon cucumbers. Like,
Mhm.
so use your SNAP dollars to also buy seeds.
That is a great tip. A lot of people don't know that. We have a super chat from Prairie Fire, Nebraska. He is also a farmer. He says, I am torn on this hot food availability for EBT. I'll make money selling more chicken, but how can I pay low wage workers? How can I pay low wages to my workers? Joking, we need food stipend. There's one answer, food stipend for everybody. It could be
That
like
would
Social
be that
Security.
would be
Everybody gets
socialism. Universal basic income, which in this country, I'm like, when we like, oh, like everybody should like have a starting place that start, and you will hear people who are struggling being like, we don't need universal basic income. I don't need a handout. But you do. Corporations are getting handouts all the time. That's the only way that they're able to amass that amount of money is to be in collusion with the government.
Rakesh says potatoes, they grow basically in they they grow in basically any soil, and you can cover up some of the green parts of the plant to make even more potatoes. That's fantastic.
I
Let's
mean, that's
just
what the Irish did, right? That was like that's why potatoes were like a lot of their dietary you know,
get
needs.
done. Yeah.
I mean, but I, as a farmer, Want y'all to know that growing and harvesting potatoes, particularly harvesting potatoes, is some back breaking work. So go out there and grow them potatoes, child, and then harvest them. You might change your mind.
I didn't know that.
Facts.
I mean, I stand by what I said. I'll take what I can get, but I really would like just the guarantee to food, because there's always this push pull, because eventually the grocery store finds out that I'm getting a subsidy for foods. Eventually, you raise my wages, the landlord finds out. Like, I want it written in stone that I have food. I don't want this to be inflated out. I don't want it to be cut in some just weird way. I want access to food.
It's ideal. Drea says, MT and Tanya, as a poor single mom who has had to make the quote unquote choice to stay in hurtful and unsafe situations, thank you. That was when we were, mentioning the staying in relationships just to make sure, you can eat. So otherwise, it seems like we've gotten some really good feedback on the show today. Anger Slug says the episode's been great. Tanya's great. Great episode. I'm so glad you guys like this is resonating with you guys. Certainly we all eat, and we should all care about our neighbors being able to eat as well. Virtuoso says, Tanya, may I please address you as champ? I think it's because of your shirt. And we do have this question from Sune. Food deserts are bad, but are food desserts okay? Would you guys like to
Yes.
answer?
Yes.
What is your favorite
Desserts
food
are
dessert
okay.
as we close out?
Cheesecake.
Tiramisu.
Ooh, really? Okay. I didn't see that. That's complex flavors we're dealing with there.
Probably pecan pie.
Ooh.
Okay. Okay.
Cheesecake, man. Cheesecake.
Quintessentially
Cheesecake.
New York. Yes, yes, yes.
True. Sune says,
Cheesecake is a great American contribution to the world cuisine.
I didn't know cheesecake was American. That's fantastic.
Yes, it's one of the
I
very
didn't
few
know that.
American inventions, actually, in terms of culinary.
Can you make it out of government cheese?
And government cheese?
I said, can you make it out of government cheese? Is that an option?
No, because government cheese don't melt, man. And it's only that big brick of American cheese. It's patriotic to the end.
All right. So, Bertrand, would you like to tell us what you're getting into? Where can we find you?
I wish I had something cooler to say right now. I mean, the most recent writing, if people want to check it out, would be at the Baffler. And there was a pretty good forum on writers coming from poverty and working class backgrounds connected to that on Montez Public Radio. So you can find me there. And yeah, if I have any more writing, I'll let the folks at This Is Revolution know.
You better. Paul would.
My rival. My light-skinned nemesis.
It out. Pascal, we know we can find you here. I mean, hopefully, right? If the ghost of Booker T. Washington doesn't mess with your internet.
No, he will not.
The Booker T. Washington. Girl, goodbye.
You'll be getting into some grits for breakfast. That's what I know. Tanya, just tell us some of the 10 million things that you're getting into now.
People can catch me on Beat Bobby Flay as a second round judge, and also as a special judge during the holiday episodes. They can find me on Instagram at Tanya Denise Fields or Mama Tanya's Kitchen or Black Feminist Project. They can pull up on me in person. On August 2nd, we are having a peach festival because my black ass grows peaches in the Bronx. And let me tell you, my motherfucking peach juju, baby, you would think that you was in Georgia, but you really on 163rd and Simpson, and the peaches are banging. A bunch of chickens and we have eggs. And so on Sunday, August 2nd, we will be having a peach festival at our farm, Black Joy Farm. If you go and follow us on Instagram, you can get a ticket where you can get peach jam. You can get fried fish because we'll be frying fish.
I'm going to see if I can make this happen for me.
You need to make it happen, Bernie. Come on down, baby. I'm going to have a special plate just for you because I fuck with you now. So, So
I can't
there's
wait.
multiple
August
ways
2nd.
to reach out and get involved if people want to or keep up with me. But you can find me on Instagram, and then you can come visit us in person. We run a farm and a community center, and we'll be opening a social justice cafe where people can pay what they wanna, not pay what they can, pay what they wanna to eat farm to table food, and we'll be hard launching essentially in August. So pull up on me.
Nice. Are you running a GoFundMe to support
I
this?
am running a GoFundMe. So if people go to my Instagram, or if y'all have some way of disseminating the link, I'll get the link over to you too, Song.
It's in the chat
But
right
yeah, we're
now.
running a GoFundMe. I'm like, if 5,000 people donate $10, we reached our campaign. It was a small amount of money. We're just trying to raise $50,000 to like just give our our cafe little security. That's the rent for the year. We just trying to get the rent for the year to keep the doors open, because if we got the rent for the
Mm,
year, then we ain't got to worry about what we charge people when they come to eat. We can basically feed everybody. See how that works?
nice. This
Yo,
is the help.
Pascal, me and Pascal
Good.
look like we're slacking compared to that itinerary right there.
She don't stop, I swear. So Tanya, this is the help preserve a safe space for
Yes.
Black women and
Mm-hmm.
families. Link,
Yep.
got it. It's in the chat right now as we speak. Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate it. This was a fun time and a good discussion, very conversational. Pascal, would you like to take us out?
Yes, we are out.
I actually wasn't prepared for you to say that. Now I'm prepared. Let's get out. Peace.